Hey, and welcome to Unlearning Stress, the podcast where we break the rules and cycles that keep you overcommitted, overstretched, and just plain exhausted, and replace them with something better. No fluff, no guilt, just real talk, real solutions, and expert insights to help you shift the way you live. Whether you're here for the first time or you've been with me for a while, you're in the right place. I'm Mischelle O'Neill, your resident emotional wellness coach, and I'm here to help you unlearn the patterns that are wearing you down so you can live with more ease, clarity, and control. Let's get to it. Have you ever had success, something you've striven for and you really want it, and when you got it or when you got there, it wasn't, well, it didn't feel the way that you do. And success is interesting because we attach a lot of importance to it, a lot of meaning to it, a lot of feelings to it. We expect it to feel a certain way. We expect it to mean something big a lot of times to us. And the thing is, when we get it or when we arrive at that moment of success, a lot of times we don't feel as celebratory as we thought we would, or it just didn't land the way we thought, that security that we thought we would get once we got more money or once we achieved this new job or whatever it was. We didn't get it. We didn't feel satisfied. And that feeling of, I made it. Or maybe you had that feeling just maybe right then and there. It's like, I made it. And then it's like, okay, now what? What what does this mean for my life? What has changed? And we assume that when we arrive, we're going to get this big feeling of relief or fulfillment. And I'm not saying we never get that with any success that we have, but there are a lot of times for many of us, and raise your hand if that's you, that you get something that you really worked for, something that you thought when you got this, things would change drastically for you, and it didn't. And that was kind of disappointing. And it's not that anything catastrophic happened or that you failed at something, or it it's just that it fell flat. It wasn't, it's like someone handing you that golden globe and it's like, great, now what do I do with this? Or for me, a lot of times it's like, think about when you have food or you have this craving, right? And you want something so bad. It's like, I want it. And let's say chocolate, okay? And you have this craving for chocolate and you want chocolate, and you get this Hershey's milk chocolate bar and you take that first bite and you're like, that's not it. And so you think, well, maybe what I really want is dark chocolate because there's something, and it's good for you too. And there's just something about this dark chocolate, right? And so you take this bite of this dark chocolate and Lintz. I think it's Lintz that I like. And you take this bite and it starts that melting in your mouth. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, but it's not quite it. And so then you say, well, maybe if I try this one, or maybe because dark chocolate has all these different, see, I know too much about chocolate, don't I? But dark chocolate has, there's 70%, there's 90%, there's 80%. So you say, well, maybe this one's too bitter or this one's too this, and you keep trying all these different chocolates. And it's still not it. And so that's what success is. When we, a lot of times when we're striving for this success, and when we get there and it doesn't get there, give us that feelings. We start chasing the next thing, doing the next successful thing. Maybe if I made more money, okay, um, let me just throw a number. 500,000 wasn't enough. I need a million, or 100,000 wasn't enough. I need 250,000. Then I'm at a quarter, you're thinking all this thing, just maybe if I tried this, so I need more of this, or and and the thing is, we're trying to satisfy something internal with something that's external. And if this is what the goal is, why doesn't it feel like we finally made it, like we arrived? And that's what I want to talk about today. And I am Michelle O'Neill, and you are here on Break Time Live. And I am so thrilled that you've taken time during your day to sit here with me and have this conversation with me. And one of the things I think about, and I think we should think about, is who taught us what success was, or what success was supposed to feel like in the first place, right? A- And it always goes back to our examples, how we grew up, what you learn, the values you learn. One of the things is, I remember watching my grandmother and working hard, and I would go to work with her sometimes, or my mom or my grandfather, and you see their work ethics and you see the things they do in it. And when they do those things, you see how successful they are in accomplishing the other things that they want in their lives. And so we start learning that work makes us successful, or getting money helps us be successful, or relation, whatever it is, we start learning what success looks like. But then it doesn't stop there. We learn that, one of the things is, my mother was a teacher, and it was important to her that I got an education, because education will allow you to move up in the world, to do more things in the world. And so you get this degree and you think, oh, this is going to be great. But how many of us out there get degrees, and then it doesn't get us that position or that job that we thought that we would get, or that feeling? It does give us that feeling of accomplishment, and that is great. But sometimes we put additional meanings and feelings on these things that we strive through. And then there are mentors out there. Is how many times do you look on the internet and it says, if you want this in your life, you need to do this? Or we have mentors who are important with us, and we see them at a certain um, time in their life, at a certain season in their life, and we want that too. And so we say, what do we need to do to have that success? Again, that internal feeling that we have, or that we want, or that we long for, is we're looking for something on the outside. And for me, it was one of the things that really come up for me is the military. My father was in the Air Force. Yay, Air Force. I was in the Air Force. My husband was in the Air Force. And my daughter was in the Air Force. And watching my father and him strive for retirement, because once you get retirement, right, you're set for life. Because no matter what, you're going to have a pension, or your retirement. And so when I went in the military, my all-time goal was, I don't care what happened, I was going to stay in and retire so that I could get my retirement. Because then no matter what happened, see my thought process, no matter what happened, I would always have that to fall back onto. And so that was my whole goal in the military. just to retire. And I did. And I accomplished it. And then I went to work again, right? And that's what we're taught. It was like we set success based on those things around us, and I built my whole career on that one target when there were so many other things that I could have achieved, but I achieved it. And I actually achieved it earlier than I expected because they did something called the early out. And so I got it way sooner, and it gave me a release. I was glad. That was one thing that I had in my pocket. Notice, one thing that I had in my pocket. And it gave me that safety net that I wanted. Not all up safety, but I had that net that I wanted, right? And it was like, okay, so I've gotten that. And you know what? It did what it's supposed to do. It solved that quasi financial security piece. But that money doesn't go long in this world that we live in, right? But it didn't answer the deep questions, that deep hunger, that deep feeling of I'm still missing something. And it's those deeper hungers for identity or fulfillment. And it's not always those exterior things. In fact, it's almost never those exterior things that will fill that deep need for identity and fulfillment. And sometimes we chase other definitions like work. Sometimes we chase other things that don't work for us. But either way, success can only solve what is built to solve. So, what am I talking about? Well, if you've achieved what you were taught to value, which I did, and you still feel that something is missing and you still feel unsettled, what is that really telling you? When success doesn't satisfy that hunger, when that hunger doesn't disappear, when success is still sitting out there, and sometimes it actually deepens, what we do is we push harder. We still seek and look after what we think we're missing. We're trying to satisfy that hunger. And in society, a lot of times it's just not that we want more success, but what we are actually craving for is meaning. Did you get that? If I asked you right now, deep in your heart, right here, if meaning is something that you're looking for, that you're searching for, and we can call it other things, we can call it purpose. Is it that you really want to know that your life mattered? That all this work that you've been doing, that all this striving, all this loving, all this caring that you've been giving and doing, at the end of the day, that your life mattered? Would you raise your hand? Would you say, that's me? You know, we're taught that purpose is so big. I mean, you see it in the books, you see it in advertisements. Find your purpose, figure out what it is that you really want in life. Be an influencer. What is your legacy? All these things boil down to, does our life really matter? Sometimes it's seasonal, that legacy that we look for, that finding out that our life matters. Sometimes it's relational, sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes it's just faithful. Sometimes we're thinking that knowing that we made it, knowing that our life matters is going to be this big revelation. Is all of a sudden we're going to know what our purpose is. We're going to know and we're going to make something. And how many people strive for their purpose or what they think their purpose is, and they find out later, no, that wasn't it. But sometimes that striving towards your purpose or that thing that you think is your purpose is just one leg of the path, one lesson to move you forward. One of the things I find with my ladies that I think a lot of times we push aside is sometimes our purpose, or sometimes knowing that our life matters isn't this big hoopla, this big thing, this big, yay, you made it. Sometimes it doesn't scream at you. Sometimes it passes you by, and sometimes you don't even realize it or don't even know it in your lifetime. But sometimes it's revealed in your eulogy, or sometimes it's revealed in the small things, or in one letter that you may find later in your life. Sometimes our success is in what we do for others, is taking care of a parent or parents with dementia, is being the only sibling, the only one who at this season in her life could. This is her life or his life mattering. It may be the exact season that you were shaped for. I love, if you know any of the biblical characters, it's Esther, because there's a saying that says, for such a time as this. And sometimes those are quiet times and no one claps for you. You don't get applause. You don't get the recognition that you feel you should or you thought you would. But whatever you're doing mattered deeply. And sometimes you'll never know that. The dissatisfaction that you feel isn't because you're ungrateful. It's because you hunger for that significance, for that recognition, that knowing, back to that your life mattered. And a lot of times when you're looking for that money that you feel that will make everything feel better, or that job or that position or that success in your business that you're looking to accomplish, I'm not saying those are bad things, but sometimes you may be measuring it with the wrong metric. If what you're really asking is, does my life matter? Then success was never going to be enough to answer that. And when I say you feel flat, it doesn't mean that that flatness is wrong. Dissatisfaction doesn't automatically mean that you made a mistake. I want you to hear this. If you can sit with what you achieved, if you can reflect on what that meant to you, what that lesson was, what it meant to get to the next stage. There are so many times that I will look back over my life and what I was striving for in that moment. And I realize I wasn't ready. But what I learned and what I'm carrying into this next season with me, I need it. So if you can sit with that thing that you achieved, and even though you didn't get the hoopla and the satisfaction that you thought, if you can reflect on what that meant, if you can say, I learned something about myself here, then it wasn't wasted. Not at all. It is just as powerful to learn what didn't fit you as what does. One of the things I love asking people, especially my clients, when I ask them a question and they say, I don't know, ask yourself, what don't you like? Because we can always answer that. We can always articulate what we don't want and what we don't like. And that helps us get closer to what it is that we do want. That helps us get that clarity in the process. One of the things that makes me think about that is cake. My daughter is an amazing, amazing baker, and she makes cheesecakes to die for. And we were talking the other day about she had done this cake, this strawberry cake from scratch. And it was the first time she wanted to try this recipe, and she wanted to try doing every bit of it, even from, she said, I made my own baking flour. And so I'm thinking, okay, what's baking flour? So I looked it up and she was telling me that. So every part of that cake was from scratch, it was from her heart. And she said it was really good, but it was denser than I liked. And so you're probably wondering, why is she telling me about this cake? Because I want you to see the process here. A lot of us would have seen that end result as a failure, or in the smallest way, it wasn't a success. But that's not how she looked at it. What she thought is, okay, it was denser. Now I have to figure out what I need to do next time to lighten it up, to make it more light and fluffy and airier. And then she was thinking about, what other things can I do to improve the taste? Maybe add real strawberries, maybe add more extract here, or add this spice. And so each time she compounds and makes this cake better. And that's kind of how our life is. Each time we reach an area of what we think is success, we learn something from that and we compound on it. And we think of other ways that we could make it better. And so that's evolution. And a lot of times, if we don't realize that's what's happening, it feels like dissatisfaction at first. And growth can feel like restlessness. And you know what? Maturity can feel like discontent. But maybe making that cake Having the success of actually getting that far wasn't a mistake. It was just your first draft. Maybe it was just a layer to coming up with the most phenomenal, light, melt in your mouth cake that you've ever made. Maybe that was just your first version of that recipe in your life. And refinement isn't rejection, it's just an adjustment. It's paying attention and it's tasting and learning. And each step of that cake in your life gives you more clarity and helps you to refine. And so if that first level felt flat, maybe it wasn't failure, it was feedback. How many times have we heard that word, feedback? And maybe your life doesn't need a new destination. Maybe it just needs refinement. And look, if anything I said today here sat with you, made you think, gave you an insight or a way that you've never thought about it before, good. That's why I'm here. And if you'd like more, I'm actually building a space for us called the Undivided. And if that's something you're interested in, well, or knowing more about, the link is in the comments. And I'd love to see you on that list. But I want you to know before I go that, hey, I'm Mischelle O'Neill, and you are here on Break Time Live. Until next time, I want you to think more about maybe you just need refinement. And maybe that success that felt so flat is just feedback. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye. If this episode hits home, don't just push it aside. Lean into it. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And connect with me on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Substack, where we go even deeper. Links will be in the comments. And if you're ready to start unlearning the patterns that keep you stuck, keep listening, because real change happens one choice at a time. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.